Good evening. Can you hear me? What about others?
Idea.
How you wrote your exams?
Today no exam, tomorrow only.
Tomorrow only. Okay. So where are we now? Okay, so we have discussed about cervical fractures, right? Important fractures are hangman fracture, Jefferson fracture, and then we have compression fractures, that is wedge fracture, bus fracture, and then dislocations, bilateral and unilateral dislocation. These are the very common cervical fractures we have. Okay. So what I am saying is, from upper cervical vertebrae, the most common one is this Jefferson and hangman fracture, and maybe in the remaining vertebrae, the typical vertebrae, we have this compression fracture and bus fracture. Out of these two things, the bus fracture is very severe. It's a very severe form of fracture, and it can cause some neurological deficits also. The burst fracture is one of the complicated or very difficult to handle. Okay, after that, we have one more thing called unilateral or bilateral facet dislocation. Okay, these are the very common ones. So already we have talked about this Jefferson and hangman fracture, right? So C1 is Jefferson fracture, and C2 it's a hangman fracture. And after that, we have dense fracture also. We have classification for dense fracture, right? So we have completed these things. Let's move on to compression fracture and bus fracture. Okay. Okay, so most of the fracture managements are like, if you are going for conservative management, when we are going for conservative management means the fractures are stable and we don't have much neurological deficit. In that case only we go for conservative. Conservative management is like the hollow vest orthosis, application of tongs, or the application of skeletal traction or hollow vest orthosis. These are all conservative management. And surgical means like open reduction and maybe screws or plate fixations. Okay, commonly we have two types of collars. Mostly in the fractures related to fracture, we use always this rigid one. A rigid collar immobilization is always provide more stability. So after maybe during progression, maybe we can go for soft collars. Maybe in the acute stage, and only after confirmation that the fracture is healed completely, we can move for soft collars. Otherwise, they need to use the fixed ones. rigid collars are the ideal one, and out of this, this Philadelphia collar immobilization is very frequently used. So here it's a type of conservative management, that is, it is not a surgery needed, but skull traction is a kind of invasive one. We need to put some kind of calibers into the temporary meters. Okay, so this is a little bit painful, but this is important that that stability, we need to give proper stability during healing stage. So now let's move to the bust fracture. So for all the fractures, like I told you, for Hangman, Jefferson, bust fracture, compression fracture, or bilateral joint facet dislocation, for whatever it is, our rehabilitation protocol is same. Okay, so here you can see that bust fracture, it is actually a kind of complicated one, comminuted fracture of the entire vertebral body. So you can see that the entire vertebral body is getting collapsed. Okay, so and one more thing is, sometimes if it is worsened enough, that it can cause retrovulsion of bone fragment. Maybe some fragments may move posteriorly and impinge the spinal cord also. Okay, so there is a greater chance for retrovulsion of bone fragments into the spinal cord. And one more thing we need to know is how much the stability of this posterior ligament. Okay, so this is very, very important thing. This stability of the posterior ligament can decide, okay, whether it is severities. The severity of the injury can be decided by this posterior ligamentous stability. Okay, so in the, maybe if it is a soft tissues like the ligaments and all, you need to take MRI. Otherwise, it's a little bit difficult, or CT scan. If it is not expensive and it is not available in the emergency situations, we can go for CT scan. So in this type of fractures, so that is, the burst fracture is one of the worst fractures in the cervical injuries. Okay, because of that, maybe it's 80% of the people who are having burst fractures can have injury to the spinal cord also. And one more thing we need to find out is what about the stability of the posterior ligaments, posterior collateral ligaments. So for this thing, the management is mostly surgery. Surgical correction is the important or mandatory one in burst fractures. Okay, so the mechanism of the injury, when you talk about this, usually caused by axial loading in flexion. That is any, along with the flexion, any heavy weights fall on the head, or sometimes maybe he's twisted, or is doing somersault movements, that kind of thing. That is, the whole body weight is getting compressed. Okay, so flexion and axial loading can cause this burst fracture, or maybe falling from any heights, falling from any heighted place, but the neck position may be flexion. That is the thing. So almost like motor vehicle accident, or fall from a height onto the head. These are the main common mechanism of injury in burst fractures. You can see that this is actually, you can see the reduction in the height of the vertebral body. Overall height is getting reduced, and it is also equal in the posterior height, as when you take that from anterior and posterior, both the spaces may be getting reduced. maybe in the compression, the main difference, that is the main difference you have to find out, or to whether it is a burst fracture or compression fracture. So in the compression fracture, you can see that only anterior portion, the anterior portion of the vertebral body is getting compressed, but it's like type of wedge. That's why the name says wedge fracture. Okay, the compression fracture means only anterior aspect is getting compressed or impacted. It is more safe compared to burst fracture. So here you can see that the overall height is getting reduced. Both in the, maybe in the lateral views also you can see it. Here it is lateral view only. You can see the reduction of the height. Vertebral body's height is getting equally reduced. Sometimes the displacement also you need to note down, and in the CT or MRI, specifically in MRI, you can check the posterior ligament stability. Is there any damage to that? This is of superior view. Superior view, in this thing you can come to know that you have this type. See the fracture line, right? Okay, one more fracture is there. It's a fracture of the spinous process of C6 and T. It's a type of avulsion fracture. Maybe the powerful action of any muscle or ligament pull can have some pinch or broken bones with that. Okay, that is what we call Gleich-Schawler fracture. So here also the mechanism is same, the powerful hyperflexion. Okay, so the mechanism is the hyperflexion of cervical vertebrae is a root cause, and along with that, the paraspinal muscles, a sudden contraction of paraspinal muscles can cause that avulsion fracture of spinous process. Okay, so this is more of stable and stable fractures, stable, and sometimes it is of overuse. Micro trauma might cause stress fractures. So here also you can go for AP view, or in the lateral views, it is in the lateral, out of all the oblique or different types of views, lateral views, or it can be easily seen through lateral views. Okay, and one more sign here for this type of fracture is ghost sign on AP view. Okay, in the anteroposterior view, you can see that it's a kind of illusion that spinous process is not how to say that, it is not specific, or it is not a defined one. So that's why it's called as ghost sign. So here you can see that it is not a defined shape, or it's kind of merged or illusioned. Okay, so it's a very rare and stable one. This so the conservative management or allo vast can be applied. Okay, for wedge fracture, so wedge fracture, as I already told you, it's a compression fracture. Okay, so compression fracture, that is pure flexion movement, no axial compression. You need to know the difference between this wedge and burst fracture. Okay, so wedge fracture is pure flexion moment on the spine without any axial any loading on the vertebrae. Okay, so pure flexion moment and without any rotation or shear forces. Okay, so purely it's a hyperflexion force without axial compression or axial loading. So here also motor vehicle accidents, commonly we get this type of fractures, and here the most damaged part is the anterior segment. Anterior portion or anterior column of the vertebra is getting affected. So buckled anterior cortex, so the size or height of the anterior portion is getting reduced. Okay, so that is what buckled anterior cortex or loss of height of anterior vertebral body. Okay, here you can see that That's what called buckled anterior cortex. So height is also buckled means compressed. Okay, and there is a loss of height also. And then we have radiographic assessments. Very important thing is you can take anteroposterior, lateral, and in some cases we need open mouth views. That is a dense view. Other a name for open mouth radiographs are dense view. Okay, these are all maybe useful for us. And in case of oblique, sometimes it is not shown in that views, maybe AP, lateral, or open mouth. We cannot see the fractures. Then that's what we call it occult fracture. Maybe the symptoms and signs are such that you believe that the person is having fracture, but we don't see it because it is not that easily visible. In that, some type of fractures or kind of it disappears, or it is not visible in the normal views. In that case, oblique radiographs are also added to find out is there any occult fractures. Means it's kind of the fracture would be there, but it is not visible in X-rays. That type of things can be seen in oblique radiographs. And one more thing is compression fractures. Compression fractures can be evaluated by not only that, in the lateral views, you need to do active flexion and extension to find out is there any, for example, sometimes we don't have availability of MRI. During emergency cases, you don't have, means what we have to do is, only thing is it should be active, no passive no passive flexion or extension of cervical spine. Only actively they need to involve, and then you need to take it in the lateral view. This is useful for finding out the instability of the posterior ligament. That portion is easily, we can find out whether it is affected or not. And whenever this posterior ligament instability is there, we need to be extra careful, and that management should be more, it should provide more stability compared to posterior ligaments. If there is no involvement of this ligament, then you can go for rigid collars, and you can start the yearly mobilization also. But whenever the posterior ligament is involved, we need to confirm the radiographic healing, as well as it should be healed properly. The ligament also should attain the stability, and it should heal accurately. Okay, so here you can see that in this thing, this posterior ligament, this posterior ligament complex is, we need to know the border of this thing. It is very, very crucial that if it is intact, we can see that well-defined border, well-defined line is there, right? So if there is any injury, if there is any indeterminate injury, but it is not that markable, but the person is having a ligament injury, means you can see that it is kind of it doesn't have any markable demarcation. You can see that, and it is a complete injury. You can see that the line is completely disappeared. Okay, that's all about this wedge and burst fracture. Let's move on to the subluxation, that is facet dislocation, unilateral or bilateral. So I told you this before that, this posterior ligament stability is play a major role. So if there is any disruption or instability in the posterior complex, then it causes more displacement. more hyperflexion would be there, and the muscle spasm is also very severe, that it is difficult to diagnose also. Okay, so that these are all very important that this posterior ligament instability can cause. And one more thing is, initially it may be stable, and later on, because sometimes this posterior ligament instability can be started later on, maybe 2 or 3 days later, or after a week also. Sorry. After a week also, you can expect some kind of dislocation or displacements. Okay, so in that thing, the flexion and extension views, I told you in the lateral radiograph, ask the patient to do flexion and extension, and this is very helpful for finding out the stability of the posterior ligaments. So what are the signs we have in this thing means the loss of normal cervical lordosis. So it is kind of kyphosis. So it's abnormal. Normally we have cervical lordosis. That is it is concave on the posterior aspect. But what happen if there is any anterior subluxation and all, you feel that the normal alignment is changed. And then you can feel there is an anterior displacement of the vertebral body, and then here the interspinous distance also gets increased. Okay, these are all the signs that there is a displacement, and it can cause compression to spinal cord. We have facet dislocations. Okay, unilateral and bilateral. One of the important things different about this, apart from other fractures, how it is different means this fractures and all, it's rotation along with any mechanism. You have a rotation also. Okay, so in the facet so forward rotation of one side of the vertebrae, maybe dislocated, one side is dislocated. Okay, and then what happen if you see that if my left side it's got dislocated, means it's turned towards the normal side and laterally tilted to the affected side. So left side fracture means the neck may be rotated this way, and then it is tilted, the lateral flexion towards the affected side. Okay, so normally in the unilateral facet dislocation, what happens is any one side is affected, means your it turns or rotated towards normal side, and it is laterally flexed, or it's get collapsed on the affected side. Is it clear what I'm saying is? So this is what unilateral facet dislocation. We need to be careful with which side it is rotated and which side it is flexed. So after that, unilateral facet dislocations are more stable compared to bilateral one. In the bilateral facet dislocation, you can see that there is a forward displacement of both the facets. Okay, so what happens is, only thing is it is getting locked in one point or one tip. That is the edge of the thing. How to say that? That is the inferior facet of superior vertebra is locking anterior to the superior vertebra of the lower vertebrae. Sorry, sir. Inferior facet of the superior vertebra, and then in this superior facet. It is not vertebra, it's a superior facet of the lower. How it is articulated, like in that way, it is more of coming to the edge or a point where it may, if it is ligament issues or involved, means it may be completely dislocated, or if there is any ligaments or intact, means you have some kind of the tips are getting engaged. And other than that, most of the things get forward displaced. So this type of fractures, or maybe it's having a very high risk of cord damage. like the bus fracture. This is also one of the dangerous one. And so most of the patients with this bilateral facet dislocations have complete neurological deficit. Okay, so this type of patients have the most common complaint of quadriplegia. Okay, so along with that, I told you rotation. So this mechanism of injury is flexion, distraction, and rotation. This is the forces that acts during injury. During the time of injury, the person is having flexion movement, rotation, and distraction. And here you can see that there is a complete loss of or complete collapse or tearing of both posterior ligament and then the facet joint capsules also. These are the two important things that provide stability in the posterior aspect, right? So these two things are getting involved means we lost the stability. And in some cases, in severe cases, you may have the intervertebral disc is also gets affected. And so only thing that remain intact is your anterior longitudinal ligament. Okay. So this is what our mechanism of injury for this bilateral. So out of all the things, hangman fracture and this one bilateral facet dislocation and bus fractures are complicated. And if it is of prognosis is very bad after conservative management. After 2 days, if you see the neurological deficits are also progressing, or it is not a positive sign, the surgeon cannot find any positive sign in conservative management, they immediately go for surgical correction. Okay, so for this thing, maybe half of the vertebral body is displaced or complete displacement. Okay, so here you can see that the typical radiographic findings are a bow tie or a bat wing appearance. Okay, and here the views in which we can see the findings are AP, lateral, oblique, and open mouth views. So here you can see that this is actually more than 50%. More than 50% is getting forward displaced. Okay, so unilateral means it's less than half only. The vertebral bodies are not that completely displaced. Only less than half of the vertebral body is getting displaced. Okay, and one more thing is that I told you for unilateral dislocation, the problem is its rotation towards the unaffected side and laterally flexed towards affected side. Okay, this type of things are typical features of unilateral facet dislocation. And other thing you can see is the widening of the disc space. And then here you can see that there is no overlapping. Always we see that superior vertebrae is getting engaged in that thing, right? So here what happened is that kind of overlapping is missed out. Okay, so you can see that it is not accurately engaged. It looks like kind of bow type. I don't find it looks close to that, but it's a kind of to remember or too easy to remember, this kind of signs are used. Okay, it somewhat looks like a bow tie sign. So no overlapping, and the space is also, intervertebral space is also increased. So the space, interspinous space is also increased. And then you can find it is less than 25%. The displacement is less than 25%, and it is comparatively safe. Okay, so that's it about our cervical fracture. Okay, different types of cervical fractures, and then I already discussed this rehabilitation protocol, right? From day 1 to first week, and then 3rd to 4th week, and then 8th to 12th week, and 12th to 16th week. Okay, we have that. So apart from this protocol, we have some physical therapy treatment. Means so always resting is very important, and then so before that, the first aid or golden period, I told you that a time at which the injury occurs, and the admission time, the hospital admission time is a crucial period that decides. Okay, that decides your thing. So the people who are highly skilled in managing this, that is the first aid management or paramedics, they are going to handle the patients. And then positioning, that's what I told you. The positioning is very important. If we collapse, or if you cause more damage, maybe like 40 to 50% of cases get worsened during mishandling. Okay, so that is a very important thing. So the stable positioning, and using any collars, immediately they need to have some stability. So ice therapy, and heat, and then ultrasound, and so ultrasound can also be used for controlling the pain and healing also. Nowadays, the fracture healing is highly influenced by ultrasound. We can use it for non-union also. In some fractures, the non-union is very common. We have some research findings that tells you that ultrasound can be used for that. And along with that, soft tissue healing, to increase the healing of soft tissues, that is the posterior ligament injuries and all. To promote the healing, you can use ultrasound. These are all generally I'm list out the treatments. So, and then we have soft tissue mobilization and massage. Okay, so this is also one of the ideal way to relax the spasm, and to reduce the pain. You all know the importance of massage and mobilization, right? So we can, while doing the massage or mobilization, what we can do is we can remove the chemical irritants that is getting collected. Okay, you can improve the blood supply also, the oxygen and nutrition, everything that is supplied and then removed. So this is very useful for reducing the pain, achieving the range of motion, and is there any tightness, it can help you in relaxing everything. Okay, so soft tissue mobilization and massage is also one of the important treatment, but the time at which we are starting, right, that is very crucial. And we need to be careful with whenever like passive mobilizations or soft tissue mobilizations, passive movements, everything should be after 8th week. Okay, after the completion of 8th week only you can start, and maybe 12th week you can go for strengthening also. And then the traction. So spasm, severe spasm is there, means maybe it's not what I'm talking is our intermittent traction, intermittent or static traction we are using, not that skeletal or skull traction. Okay, this is different. I mean, maybe the orthopedic surgeons are going for a skull traction or skeletal one. Okay, we are talking about this traction for maybe in the pain during rehabilitation stage, right? At that time, we need to use intermittent tractions, which it's like so many research findings shows that traction is one of the methods that will release the spasm and release the pain, everything is safe after 8th week. But this traction, what we are discussing, is not the skeletal traction. Just remember that. And then your safe, that is the radiographic findings and everything says that it's stable. And if you rule out the posterior ligament instability and all, we can go for strengthening your neck. Maybe the like in the minimum protection phase, when we going to start this strengthening program, means it is like a minimum protection phase or last phase, or it's a kind of it's a like the crucial time for rehabilitation. Okay, so the last phase of rehabilitation, you need to strengthening as well as improving the range of motion. So flexibility, strength, and coordination can be focused. Okay, and then stretching, flexibility exercises can be started. So, and one more thing, awareness and patient education about the exercise schedules, and how many sets and how to progress it, and good stretching techniques, and without any like postural corrections, right? And proper workplace setups and work habits, everything can be taught to the patient. And if give some time for them to ask doubts also related to the positioning, the pillows, usage of pillows, and usage of chairs, how it would be, everything should be detailed. Okay, that's it for our cervical fracture. Okay, so, and one more thing is, this protocol we already discussed, day 1 to 1 week, and 2 to 4 weeks, and 4 to 8 weeks, and then 8 to 12 weeks. Okay. So this is actually passive ranges and active range of motion can be started after 8th week. Okay, and one more thing is, we have already discussed about this log rolling, right? Log rolling with assistance in the day 1 to 1 week, log rolling. So functional activities also in the 2 to 4th week, it is log. So what is that means? You need some people along with you. We need 3 more members to do this log rolling technique, but it is very important during this first two phases, right? So let's see what is log rolling a patient. Okay, so one more thing is, in this thing 4 members are needed, and head of the team is this person who is handling the head is going to be in charge, and he is the one who is going to give instruction to when to roll, and when so this is a captain of that team. So let's see how to do log rolling.
I am Frank, and today I'm going to demonstrate to you how to do a log roll. In this demonstration, we will require the assistance of fellow responders or pedestrians nearby. In circumstances where you have to log roll a patient, you'll get your fellow responder to take up C-spine control at the head of the casualty. Anthony, take up C-spine control. On. Once you have C-spine control in place, if time permits it, we'll do a quick distal pulse check and CSMs. Also, you will need 2 more responders to aid with the log roll. For the log roll, we're going to use the under-over technique. I'll place my right hand on the casualty's shoulder, and my left hand just below the casualty's hip. Second responder will go across under my arm, under the casualty's knee. The last responder will go over the casualty's knee, under the casualty's ankle. It's important to remember that the responder at the head of the casualty is in charge, and he will call when to roll.
Prepare to roll,
Prepare to roll.
and roll.
At this point here, one of the responders can do a quick check on the casualty's back to make sure there's no further injury. All is on as to the legs.
Like this technique is useful for pressure checking the pressure source and any during examination and assessment also, and during shifting also after any injury or trauma. He is shifted in this space, or if you wanted to turn, or if you want to check the any other associated injuries, or if you want to check the other segments, other areas and everything. And also to us, once we need to do this type of rolling, okay, to avoid some kind of pressure source or other lung infection, chest infections, to avoid complications, we need to use this log rolling technique for transfers.
If someone is qualified, they can also check rectal tone. At this point, you get the spinal board, slide under the casualty, and again, the responder at the head will call them lower. Head lower and lower. That completes the demonstration for a log roll.
Okay, so in the acute stage, we need this 3 more assistants. But when you are gradually gain the stability, we can reduce the people. Maybe 2 person is also enough. Yes. That's all about our cervical fracture rehabilitation. Okay, so other than that, this rehabilitation, everything is you're familiar with that. So when we need to do the movement and what are the movements allowed. Okay, so maybe after 8th week only the cervical movements are started. Okay, the real the cervical mobility is started by the beginning of 8th week. Till that, no movements are allowed in the cervical region. So other than that, the remaining muscles may be like to improve the endurance and to improve the strength of the unaffected muscles, unaffected side. You can go for a gentle. Okay, so for upper limb, you can see that don't go for overhead movements. Maybe it can be disturbed. The cervical spine maybe get disturbed. So the gentle active range of motion to upper and lower extremities. And so these are the various things. Simple, we can easily follow this. Nothing is new here. Abdominal, gluteal and quadriceps isometric exercises can be started. Okay, these are the important rehabilitation protocol for cervical. Okay, we have completed the cervical fracture. Okay, so tomorrow, what about tomorrow? 4 to 5. Shall we have class, or what do you say? Is it okay for you all?
Okay, me.
Okay, because already we have like last week also we couldn't continue the class, and this week also. So Thursday, I think I have one exam duties there. I will check it and tell you. Okay. Other than that, tomorrow we will have from 4 to 5. Okay, we'll start our thoracolumbar topic. Okay, and all the fractures related to lumbar and thoracic region. Is there any doubts? Anything you want to ask?
No, miss.
Shall we wind up? Okay, thank you. All the best. Prepare well for your tomorrow's exam. Okay, bye.
Thank you, Miss.
Thank you, miss. Take care.
Bye.